Good afternoon. Whether you're joining us on Facebook, Instagram, or maybe LinkedIn or maybe YouTube, still please share where you're based, where your location is, because very often we're going international. And the reason why we're going international because we have some amazing guests, just like Andy Lopata, who is international speaker, but actually who is based not far from London. Is it right, Andy?
Yes, just outside London.
That's true, yes. And what a surprise. Recently, I was all the way in London airport and I missed the opportunity to meet Andy. But guess what? We're going to meet with Andy somewhere else. So today, I'm so delighted to have Andy. And today we will be speaking about Andy's another book, which is all about connected leadership. Andy, I'm so excited to have you back. Thank you so much for your patience. First of all, with me getting back home all the way from office and sorting out the internet issues. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. It's always worth waiting for, Olga.
That is fabulous. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Well, very often it just shows how being a leader is not only leading others, is not only about how to be, but it is about building strong relationships. And this is what your book is all about. Is it right?
That's right. Yes, it's the principle of the book is that for leaders, we focus so much time on challenges like managing teams, managing change, business development, attracting investment, whatever it might be. And I believe that underpinning the solution to all of those challenges is a network of strong professional relationships. And unfortunately, most people, by the time you get to leadership level, you probably have a good degree of nous about how to manage strong relationships intuitively, but there's not often much thought set aside about how to do it strategically. And that's really what I focus on in the book.
And that's really interesting when you mean strategically, because intuitively we all kind of think we do the right thing when we build relationships. We assume we build the right relationships in the right way. But what do you mean by doing that strategically?
I mean, thoughtfully. I mean, actually setting time aside and saying, what am I trying to achieve? Who can help me achieve that more effectively, more easily? And what do I need to ask them? So I've got a model where I talk about the different types of people that you need within any project that can help you to achieve success in that project. And once you have mapped out your network against those three kinds of people, you can look and you can say, where do I know the right people, but I haven't got strong enough relationships? Where do I know the right people have strong enough relationships, but I'm not asking the right questions? And where don't I know the right people? And that's a very simple example, but a very powerful one of how just a little bit of strategic thought can make a huge difference. And I go through this exercise with a lot of my clients, and they're uncovering people straight away that they know, and they're not asking for support, and they're people that would be happy to support them, or people that they know, but they're not investing any time in getting to know better. So it's just those little touches like that that make the big difference.
That is quite interesting, Andy, because that makes me think how many solopreneurs they actually do try their best to do everything by themselves. They have a vision, they have a goal because they're really good at something and they want to achieve it. They want to either pass it on or whatever it is. And they forget about the power of collaboration. And
we're conditioned, sorry, Olga, we're conditioned to do things on our own. We're conditioned to look strong, to show that we know that we're capable, that we can do this. And so we waste so much time and energy in making mistakes that others have made before us that we could have learned from, in trying to do too many things ourselves, in not tapping into the expertise and the experience that surrounds us. And collaboration is a key part of that.
But you see, it's really, really profound. And I like that. Yes, let's collaborate together. But can I just ask here a personal question? Because from my side, what I'm thinking straight away, okay, now you need to figure out what people you need. And now it's about reaching out to them and asking for help. But I personally, for years and years, and I'm getting better with that, but for years and years and years, I had a big issue asking for help. And I wonder, those who are watching us right now, whether it is nationally or internationally, do you have an issue with asking for help? How do you feel when it is about reaching out to somebody and seeking that help? Because to me, Andy, that was a real challenge. What would you recommend to people like that?
Well, funnily enough, you're preempting my next book, because my next book is called Just Ask, and it's
I love
all about the importance of asking for help and being vulnerable. I think there's three reasons we don't ask for help, and in answer to your question, of course I do. I'm human, and I have the same things that get in my way of asking for help that everyone else does. I'm more aware of it because I've just written a book on the topic.
yes.
But part of the reason I wrote the next book, Just Ask, was because I realised I wasn't asking for help, and I recognised what that was, the damage that was doing, both to the business and to me personally. The three things that I think stop us, and when I talk about three things stopping us, I'm being broad and generic.
Mm,
Um, the first is that we don't ask for help because we don't want to be a burden to other people. Now, the interesting thing about that is if you think about when you've helped people and you think, and particularly people, I'm talking about people you've got a relationship with, when you think about times you've helped them, you've got pleasure from it, particularly if it's worked out for them, haven't you?
yes.
So
Yeah.
we don't ask because we don't want to be a burden, but yet we get pleasure when we help others. So if you think that through, actually, by not asking, we're denying other people the pleasure of helping. It's a
Mm,
nice reframe there. The second, and I spend quite a lot of time in the book. I think the first two main chapters in the next book, the new book and the next book, the first two chapters in Just Ask are looking good and being strong. We don't ask for help because we don't want to be vulnerable. We don't want to look vulnerable. We want to look good. We want to look strong. I talked earlier about being independent, showing that we know that we can do this for ourselves.
yeah.
Uh, so here's the thing on that. If I turn round to you and say, Olga, my business is really struggling. My last 5 clients have sacked me because I haven't got the results for them. And if I don't get more clients soon, I'm going to go bust. Can you help me? Can you refer me? I
Mm,
probably sound quite weak and vulnerable. And please, nobody edit that bit out of context. um, but if I turn around to you and say, Olga, I've just finished a contract with, let's say, Coca-Cola, and it was really successful. And they've actually said that the changes that I've helped them implement have had a huge impact on their bottom line, and they're more efficient and they're getting better results because of them. Now, I know you've got a contact at Pepsi Cola, and I'm pretty sure that we could replicate those results there. Would it be helpful if you were to introduce me? Does that sound weak and vulnerable?
no, it's
It
not.
doesn't, does
It's strong.
it?
Yeah.
It's how you position it. So we don't ask because we don't want to be a burden. Well, are you really? We don't ask because we don't want to be weak and vulnerable or seem to be. Well, that's how you position the ask, how you present it. And the third reason is because we assume other people don't want to or aren't able to help us.
Mm,
Well, let them decide that. You don't assume, let them decide.
yeah.
What you can do is grow a thick skin. And I know that sounds a bit blunt, but it's about taking no as not taking no as a
Yeah.
rejection, and understanding that particularly if you're asking people you've got a trusted relationship with, the reason they say no, if your relationship is strong and they trust you, the reason they say no is very unlikely to be about
Hmm.
you. I asked one of the top speakers in the UK a few years ago if he'd mentor me. He said no. It's because he was too
Yeah.
busy. It's nothing to do with me. And he does mentor me. It's just not a formal arrangement. He picks up the phone. He answers my calls. He gives
Yeah.
me advice all the time. But he didn't want to go into that formal arrangement because he didn't want to take on that burden. That was nothing to do with his view of me.
Mm,
It was to do with his managing his time. You know, him managing his time doesn't have me in that sentence.
yes.
So we need to learn to cope with that rejection, to actually communicate to the person that we're asking, it's okay to say no to this request. And I'm not going to be offended. I'm not going to be hurt. It's not going to affect our relationship, and actually mean that. So I think if you can understand those three influencing factors that are obstacles to asking for help, it becomes easier.
I love that, Andy. And I must say that you are so right. So everybody who is right now sitting there and thinking, yeah, I'm not sure they're going to work, I actually can be assured it definitely works. Because for me, the changing point, the life-changing point literally was, as you said, when I realized by asking for help, I'm going to honor other people. And I will actually show them that I see them as an expert. I'm going to show them I respect them and I value their advice, because you would never go to somebody for an advice if you would not see them as better than you, right? Yeah.
Completely. And it's, I hesitate to use the word because I think it's got negative
Hmm.
connotations. But I'm going to use it because it's understandable. It's just important to understand what's going on behind it. But it's flattery.
Yes.
You know, and what I mean by that, flattery can often be seen as false and manipulative, and it should. Nothing you do with these relationships should be false and manipulative. Everything should be authentic and in integrity.
Mhm.
But you can flatter people in an authentic and in integrity, in an authentic way, and in integrity, you can do that. And of course, you know, flattery gets you everywhere. So by going to someone, as you say, and saying, "Look, I really respect you. I believe that I can learn from you, or I admire the way you do
Mhm.
this," then you make people feel good, and of course, they want you're giving to them, so they want to give back to you.
That's true. That's true. And I so love it. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think these are amazing, amazing tips which actually people can go away and start implementing, asking for help, that make feel other people really, really good about themselves because you ask for help. That's really wonderful. And I love the comment here on YouTube from Magda. She says, I ask when necessary for help, but usually I prefer to sort out everything without asking, and a cheeky smile. Well, Magda, I know exactly how it feels like because I've been there before, and it can be quite high price, when you try and do everything yourself. And Maria actually on YouTube also says that's very interesting. Sometimes it's also thinking that people are busy. And Maria, exactly as Andy says, that if you don't ask, you don't know. And just like in Andy's example, the other person was just too busy and he couldn't commit to helping Andy at that time. So again, nothing personal. They don't hold anything against you, which is good to know.
And for Maria's point, I mean, first of all, for Magda's point, it's fine to show that you're strong, but actually, by bringing in, you're surrounded by people who have got experience and expertise that will enhance the results you're trying to get. Why wouldn't you try and tap into that? It's not about showing strength; it's about getting the best possible result with the least amount of effort, without, as I say, not manipulating people or just passing it all over to them. So I would encourage you to seek that help, because however good you are on your own, you're going to be better with someone else's help. The top sports stars have coaches. Now, these are the top in the world at what they do. Roger Federer has a coach.
Mhm.
Tiger Woods has a coach, because they could be better still with the help of someone else. And in terms of Maria's point about people being busy, for me, when you ask for help, the most important thing you can do is make it as easy as possible for that other person to give you the help that you
Mm.
want. Now, what a lot of people do is they're lazy when they ask for help, and they leave all the work to the other person. So a classic example, my third book was about referral strategies. So, and with referrals, there's a classic example there where people turn around and say, um, can you refer me to anyone who might want my services?
Are you
You know,
awake?
yeah. Similarly, people at the moment, there's a lot of redundancies at the moment, a lot of jobs going, and people will be looking for jobs, and they'll turn around and say, "Look, can you help me find a job? If you know anyone who might employ me."
Yeah.
I have a saying that anyone gets you no one.
Yes.
And what you're doing is you're asking that other person to do all the work
Mhm.
for you. So when I talk about making it easy for people to help you, I might think, okay, I'm going to ask Olga for help. What does Olga really understand about what I do and what I'm
Mhm.
looking for? Who does Olga know?
Mhm.
How can I frame this request in a way that Olga sees someone in her mind's eye that she thinks of? And as soon as you see that person in your mind's eye, then you're thinking about it for them, not for
Yeah.
yourself. and you're halfway there to giving the help. And actually, for you at that point, it's easy for that request for help to make
Yes.
sense, and for you to go, okay, one simple action, I will pick up the phone to that person and ask them. So if you're worried about people's time, then do your homework
Hmm.
first and do their homework first. So you're effectively presenting the help they're going to give you on a platter and say, all I want you to do is do this. And you're respecting their time.
Yeah, I love that. It's wonderful. Don't approach people without doing homework first. Don't be so blunt and straightforward with like, yeah, help me. And I hear that, I receive it very often, even on LinkedIn. This is my CV. Could you please find me a job? And I'm like, I'm not a recruiter, right? So we have to be quite mindful because again, people are willing to help, but there are limits to what people can help. And today, very nicely, I received a letter, handwritten letter from all the way from India, from a lady thanking Olga, thank you so much for your 10-minute inspiration, which I do in the mornings on LinkedIn. She says one session particularly touched my heart. It was about put yourself first and look after yourself so you can help others more. And I was like, oh, that's very nice, very nice. And then on the other side, there was a request for money because she was going through some medical situation and she needs some sponsorship. And I was thinking, well, it's very, very nice when people approach you in such way. But same time, is it something what we should do in nowadays world? Do you think it's something what should be addressed to people at that level? Because clearly one thing is to ask for help. But second thing, just as you said, do the homework. Is this person dealing with sponsorship? Is this person offering financial help? I don't offer financial help. I don't do sponsorship. There are lots of things which is donation and other things which you can do. So, and that actually made me also feel a bit like, how genuine that thank you is in that case, right? So I agree with you here.
Yeah, and there's a couple of things that I want to say about that. The first is it's about the timing when you ask for
Yes.
help. In Recommended, which was the third book that I mentioned, I talk about three different scores that you give to people to decide whether they're your champion. Your champion is someone who's going to refer you on a regular basis. The first is willingness to help, trust, how much they
Yeah.
trust you. The second is understanding. How much do they understand what you're looking for? Could they have a conversation about what you need when you're not in the room? And the third is their opportunity. Are they talking to the right people? Now, your story about the lady from India got me thinking about willingness to refer, that first score, that trust, because you don't know
Mm-hmm.
her. So she's coming in when your trust is on a level of one or two. Now, okay, it might be three or four because one or two would imply
Yeah.
distrust, but it's certainly not what I would call trust positive. It's trust neutral at
Mhm.
best. Now, the nice letter might take it a grade up, but it's not going to be enough to ask you for that level of help. You invest in relationships. Stephen Covey in Seven Habits of Highly Effective People talks about emotional bank accounts. He says you wouldn't walk into a bank and say, I want to withdraw some money if you haven't deposited any first. And relationships are the same. My key rider on that is that if I go into a bank and I deposit £10 and then I withdraw it the next week, it's not the same
Yeah.
£10 note. And it's similar with a network. You give in one place and you withdraw from a different. It's your network as a whole. But relationships do need to build up before you make that request. You wouldn't go up to a complete stranger, which is effectively what she's done, and ask for that type of help.
Mm.
So it's building relationships in the long term. This is not short-term strategies. That's key. So that's the first thing on that. The second is the most famous book and the most widely respected book on the topic of influence is Robert Cialdini's Influence, the Power of Persuasion, which is a fantastic book. I have issue with just one thing in there, and that is there's this point that says that the best time to ask for help is when someone has just said thank you,
Oh,
because at that point they want to reciprocate, they want to give back.
okay.
Now the point is true. For me, however, as soon as you have given something and someone says thank you, and then you ask for something, you take away all the positive
Yes.
feeling. It becomes a transaction.
Yeah.
And by what you've experienced is exactly that. She's written a really nice note. You feel warm inside. You turn over. Now she wants
Mm-hmm.
something. Immediately, your warm feelings about that note have been
Mm-hmm.
diluted. And that for me is what's happened there. So Elizabeth Asquith-Bibesco, and I know you're going to like this. I may have shared this with you in the previous interview we did because I share it pretty much all the time. It's my favourite quote. Elizabeth Asquith-Bibesco, who was the daughter of the former British Prime Minister, Lord Asquith, and she was a poet and an author, said, "Blessed are they who give without remembering and receive without forgetting."
Yeah.
Give without remembering, receive without forgetting. And that needs to be your outlook and your philosophy to really build a strong relationship strategy. People don't want to feel manipulated.
Yes. Yeah. And this is so powerful because people do know techniques of NLP and you can be flattering other people so they will agree to anything. But at the same time, when it is genuine and when somebody genuinely wants to help you, this is so, so special. And also you feel much better about yourself. I love it, Andy.
Yeah.
But actually, may I ask you a question? What exactly made you to write a book on connected leadership? What made you think that people need to learn how to build better relationships at the leadership level?
Well, it's quite funny. This is my lockdown book. It was never planned. I mentioned my next book, Just Ask. That's the one that's meant to come out this year and hopefully still will. But what happened was just before lockdown, I was looking at introducing a new program to my business, a series of leadership retreats. I'm the director of the Fellows community, the professional speaking association, as you know, and I run quarterly meetings which are based on masterminding. I also teach masterminding to a lot of my clients, and I run mastermind groups. And for the PSA meetings, I've come up with a format that works very successfully. And I realized that over the years, I've built a network of senior people across sectors, across all sizes of organizations who get it, who have the right mindset. And I'm always introducing them to each other. And I've always wanted to do something more formal. So I was working on this idea of retreats, based around this masterminding concept and structure. And I was speaking to a few of them to talk about it, and I was out for lunch with a CEO of a pensions firm, a client of mine, and we worked together with the senior leadership team up until mid of last year, over a 1-year program. And he said to me, "You know what I've stopped doing since I worked with you?" And he listed 2 or 3 things he stopped doing. And I realized that I was undervaluing the power of what I do at that level. So I do mentor some CEOs, but I was more often brought in at the layer or 2 beneath, because senior leaders get this naturally. But I have worked with a number of them, and they've always valued it. But I had undervalued it because it wasn't where I was being asked to do the work. So that really started me on the journey, and I was talking to a few other people, and I recognized that not only should I be putting this retreat together, but actually putting my mentoring out there, not for more senior leaders. Yes. So that was the start of that journey, and then lockdown came, and at that point, I was thinking of what was happening. I was thinking, how am I going to re-educate my network about what I'm doing? And share this leadership mentoring that I want to offer now. And I came up with the idea with a tips book, an ebook, 12 tips on connected leadership. So I have, if I spin behind me, I have a series of tips books like this.
Oh, yeah.
So this is in building business relationships there. I picked up 2 there, so let's put 1 down. There's 12, 16 pages with a few quick tips, a tip a page. So I was picturing one of these for connected leadership. And I wrote my 12 headings down, and I had a mastermind group. And one of the people in the room was a very senior head of learning and development for executive development at a global organization. And he took one look at my list of 12 points and he said, "You're going to give this away?" And it was that comment that made me think, maybe I need to go into more depth here.
Love that.
So at this point, it was still just meant to be an ebook. And when we spoke last, it was and then I went away and I started writing, and I wrote a book in 2 weeks. My next book, Just Ask, I was talking about, that's now 3 years in.
2 weeks. Wow.
2 weeks. It just came because everything was in here. I repositioned what I do in about October last year. Didn't change much of what I was actually doing, but I repositioned how it was perceived away from the word networking to professional relationships because it appeals more to that leadership level, which is where I was making more impact. And just the nature of repositioning led to rewriting training programs and tools to reflect the new
Mhm.
positioning. And that led to new concepts and new ideas. So all of those were there. And in fact, I remember I was delivering a workshop for GlaxoSmithKline, client, and I had to get up really early. I had to get up about 5 o'clock in the morning, which is really early for me. I wake up and I see you're already on LinkedIn doing lives. I'm just waking up. I'm not a morning person
Right.
particularly. I'd had to get up at 5 o'clock or something to get around the M25 before it got
Yeah.
civvy to start training at 9. And so I'd gone to bed at 9:30 or something, which is too early. And I was trying to get to sleep and I couldn't. And as sometimes happens, ideas kept jumping into my head.
Yeah.
And I kept jumping out of bed and writing them on post-it notes because they were really good ideas. And I came up in that night when I was trying to get to sleep, I came up with a model that I referenced earlier, which at the time I called my 3I
Yes.
pie, with the 3 different types of people you need in any project. I came up with the 7 stages of professional relationship, and I came up with something else. I can't remember off the top of my head what the third thing was. And I remember I was doing the workshop the next day, and I got to a certain. I'd taken these post-it notes and just put them on the notes, and I got to a certain point, and I said, "You've got 2 choices now." I said, "You can have what I prepared, or you can have the ideas that I came up with in the middle of the night because I couldn't sleep."
No.
And they all voted. They all voted for the ideas that came up in the middle of the night, and they worked.
Wow.
They were fully formed pretty much. I mean, even since the book, I've developed some of them further.
Wow.
So I've got more things that I'm working on now to put out about particularly the relationship chart, the 3I pie that I mentioned, that allow people to implement it effectively. But I did it in the training, and I said, right, let's do this breakout exercise, and it was so powerful. It really, really worked. So that repositioning just shifted my gears in my brain to look a different way at things. That led to more material that I hadn't used in books before. So, and I'd had my list of 12 chapters, and I mind mapped the chapters, and as I mind mapped them, they came together really easily. And then, when I know what I'm writing about and I know what I want to say, I'm in flow quite quickly. So I wrote 2,000 words a day for 2 weeks. And, it's not the longest book in the world, but people don't want
Yeah.
long business books. They're practical. And that's what it is. So it was quite an interesting process. As I say, considering I'm in the middle of a book, well, I'm getting to the end of the process with a book that's taken 3 years. It's one that took 2 weeks in the middle of it. It was
Wow.
an interesting experience.
Angie, this is remarkable. Can I just compliment you? But first of all, being so brave to actually propose to an audience that let me just introduce the ideas which I had the night before. This is really brave. I mean, for a speaker, it is super brave. I mean, if you would say, you know what, I know that really works. I did the other day. Let me introduce it to you. That will be different. But you were introducing a brand new, unseen, unheard idea to the audience. You've got some balls, I can tell you.
For me, I talked earlier about authenticity, and people value authenticity. Just ask is about vulnerability. And vulnerability is exceptionally powerful. Now, I wasn't using it as a mechanism. It was just authentically me. That's who I am. And I was into ideas. I wanted to try it, but what I'm not going to do is put on a mask and pretend that I've been running these for months, because A, that's not honest, and B, actually doesn't serve me, because if it falls flat on its face, at least I've bought the right for it to fall flat on its face. They've bought into the process. Give me feedback. Tell me if this works. But I think it humanizes you, and people relate to that. I mean, I could come on here and I could say, yes, connected leadership is the result of 20 years of research, which in a way it is, because I've got 21 years experience in this industry. So the ideas are here, but I may have written it in 2 weeks, but it's 20 years of research in that sense. but I could have put on a different spin on it, but it wouldn't be authentic. It wouldn't be honest. And for me, going back to the topic of professional relationships and strong professional relationships, honesty has to lie at the core of them. You wear a mask, you've got to keep it on the whole time, and that gets hard, which is quite topical at the moment, I guess.
Actually, right now it's straight on the point.
Yeah.
Very true. Yes. But Andy, you mentioned 3 types of people whom you need to have in your business at their high level as like in leadership. So what are those 3 types of people, if you don't mind sharing? And of course, this information is in the book. Please go to the link, which I will share below the video, and please get the book. But also, the link is already in description. Those who are watching on the YouTube and Facebook, the link is in the description of the event. But yeah, we'll definitely share the link again. So please share with us those 3 types of people you need to have.
And they're not, they might be in your business, but it's not necessarily in your business. So the idea is that any project you're working on, anything you're trying to achieve, you have different stakeholder groups. Mm-hmm. So it might well be that if you work for a large organization, one of those stakeholder groups is your own business. So there are other people within your organization whose behavior and actions will impact on your success. Then you have your client's organization, if it's a client-facing project. Then you may have your industry, you may have your client's industry. So give you an example. I mentioned GlaxoSmithKline as a client of mine.
Yeah.
If I was looking at GSK as, in this context, what I wanted to achieve, one of my stakeholder groups is going to be the people I know within GSK. Another stakeholder group is likely to be people I know in the pharmaceutical industry. And a third one is going to be speakers who service the pharmaceutical industry, who can also help me and support me. And then within those different stakeholder groups, what I'm looking for are 3 types of people. I'm looking for people who have influence, people who can make introductions, and people who have information, ideas, and insights. So if we use that example, let's say I want to win a new project within GSK. I know certain people within GSK who, if they speak up for me, then that's going to influence the decision. So in many organizations, the decision is made by more than one person, and you want enough voices around the table speaking up for you so that they're more likely to go. The people who don't know you are going to decide to go with your proposal. I also have people in GSK who might say, to get this through, you need to speak to this person. And I can say, well, could you introduce me? So they're playing that introducer role. So I know if I try and reach that person cold, my chances are very, very severely limited.
Yeah.
But if I have someone they trust and who trusts me making a strong introduction, you really need to talk to Andy. You need to listen to him. Not only are they going to take my call, but they're going to be listening. They're going to be engaged with the conversation rather than, well, you got 10 minutes, go for it. And the third is I've got people there that can give me some insights. Look, this is what's happening within the organization. This is our key focus. What you need to do when you put that proposal together, use this language, say this thing. So last week, I interviewed a guy called Andy Woodfield. Okay. Andy is a global partner at PwC, based in the UK. So one of the big 4 consultancy firms. Andy's focus is purely relationships between PwC and the FCDO, which is the Department of Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office. Okay, so it's one of the biggest departments in the British government. And the reason I interviewed Andy is that a lot of my clients have to win business through tenders. And you can't, so it's a beauty parade. You can't just ask for the referral, be referred, win the business. Even if you ask for the referral, you've still got to go up against your competitors for that work. And Andy was talking about why professional relationships are so important, even in that scenario. And he was talking about, the language they're looking for in the tender. The answers that they're looking for to the key questions in the tender. In advance that the tender is going to go out and what the remit is, so that you can work out if you need to bring in joint venture partners to use that word again, collaborate with on the tender. You can get that all in place early because there's deadlines on the tender.
Yeah,
that information is absolutely key. He said, and in fact, sometimes you can create a tender where there wasn't one before because the information you give them, you help them identify a need they didn't recognize before. So those are the three types of people:
Mm.
influencers, introducers, and sources of information, insight, and ideas. Hence 3I pie.
Right. Love that. Love that. And this is so powerful. And I can see how it might be applicable in some businesses and
Mm.
some businesses might not. And I think it's just something natural. But again, I think if you give it another thought, a bit deeper analysis, probably it will be applicable in literally every business.
I
It,
think I think it is. I mean, the examples I've given are big organisations where this is much more
yeah.
essential. If you're a one man band or one woman band and you're selling to another one person band or to consumers, individual consumers, then of course there's not a board meeting to decide
Wow.
to make the purchase. But you know, there may be a husband or wife that
Yep.
influences. There may be an accountant who influences,
Yep.
and other advisors.
Mhm.
So it's always worth identifying what the process is, and then saying, "Who do I know who can help me with that process in those three ways?"
Yeah.
So I think it's not, when you're working on big formal bids. This is, when I work with my clients who tend to be larger organisations on the whole,
Mhm.
working with larger organisations. This is a big piece of work, and it's a worthwhile one doing. So one of my clients, who they are a small organisation, but they're working with a big industry. They've developed their own matrix where they have a spreadsheet, and on one axis, and this is what I'm developing. On one axis, they have, so going across the top, they have my 7 stages of professional relationship, which I developed for the book as well. On the other axis, they have their stakeholder groups. So
Oh.
they will, for example, they'll have, using my example, people within GSK, people within the speaking industry who serve pharmaceuticals, people
Mhm.
within the pharmaceutical industry. Let's use those 3. That will be going down the vertical axis. And across the horizontal axis, they'll have my 7 stages of professional relationship, which 1 is you recognize them, 7 is they're a friend, scale between. But they'll also, I've added in 0 for them. You don't know them. And then they're starting off by going through their network and populating their spreadsheet. So here's Olga. Olga works for the client, and we're at stage 5. So I'll
Mhm.
put Olga in that box. Then there's a color coded key that says influencer is one color, intermediary or introducer is another,
Mhm.
insight and information ideas is another color, and,
Good.
and you might be all 3. So you get a rainbow. But they'll highlight, and then immediately, and this goes back to what I said earlier, I can see Olga's a 5, which is someone who will support me if I ask for that support,
Mhm.
and she's an influencer, but I've never asked her for her help. Remember,
Mhm.
I said people that you know, but you don't have a strong enough relationship. Those
Yeah.
people you have a strong relationship with, but you're not asking the right questions, or people you don't know yet, which is the 0. So all of that information lies in front of you.
Wow, this is so powerful. I can see how by literally just having this book, obviously there'll be probably guidance how to do it, and also more information about this, just for those people who are maybe more visual and they need to literally read about this rather listening. I love that. I really love that. Well, I must say that everybody who is thinking to improve their relationships or wants their business to do better or even their career and their senior position, I think this is very innovative, new. I never heard about something like this before, but it's definitely something what I can see will work. Because
And you mentioned career there. If I just pick up on that quickly, I'm mentoring someone at the moment in the UAE government,
yeah.
and she's very ambitious, and she wants to go further. So she has done this process for the people. I said to her, "What's the job you want in 1 year? What's the job you want in 5 years? Who are the key people who are going to influence
Mhm.
that? Who can make introductions for you? Can tell you what people are looking for, what they're thinking." So it's a very flexible process. You said that in the book it will show you how to implement this. It's got the basics in the book. As I mentioned earlier, the idea is still developing since. But
Yeah.
if people subscribe to my newsletter, which is on the homepage of my website,
Good.
then I will be introducing these new ideas constantly through that.
Right.
And my plan is we've got 2 versions of the matrix, which take you the client matrix that I mentioned. I've developed my own version of that, and also a series of questions to go through. to take you through the process. And I'm just having it tested by one of my mastermind group at the moment. And then I plan to find the best way to put that together and make that available to people.
I love that. So basically, people need to go to your website, which is it andylopata.com?
Yes, you can use andylopata.com is fine,
Okay.
or just lopata.co.uk, and then just subscribe to the newsletter, and
Wonderful.
as it becomes available, I'll put the link in there.
Oh, that's great. And I must say, your newsletters actually are great. They are really interesting. Sometimes you receive newsletters and you think, well, this is just another boring newsletter, but yours actually are great. So yes, definitely people should go to your website, which is Andy Lopata or lopata.co.uk, did you say?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and subscribe there. That's wonderful. Well, I must say, I'm definitely looking forward to receive the news about the next book, which is now in the process for 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is just us. That'll be very exciting. But I will definitely make sure that I will post the link for this particular book below this video once more so people can actually get it, because I think something what is all about creating better relationships, building relationships is almost like a theme during this lockdown situation, because people are not anymore mingling in the offices. They're not anymore getting together. I mean, we started slowly, and yet we don't know when we're gonna go back to normal, whichever that normal was, which I don't want to go back to normal. Who wants to go back, right? Want to go forward. So actually right now is the time, just as you said, you took this time during the lockdown to write a book. People can take this time to read this book and improve their relationships at their businesses right now, at their careers right now, and to actually definitely innovate, probably pivot their businesses and actually change so many things because of the communication that we'll have at that high level.
Completely agree. And you sort of talk about this being different times.
Mm.
The most in-demand talk that I have at the moment is professional relationships in the post-COVID world.
Oh,
And, we have to adapt. We have to change. It's harder to maintain professional relationships over Zoom or over Skype or whatever platform you're using, over Teams. It's harder to do it when you can't see people in person.
yep.
A lot of people feel isolated. And my number one tip at the moment, if that's useful, is to dial up the empathy. And actually, it's been a really interesting learning point for me, because this is important the whole time, but it's become even more important now. Earlier on in lockdown, I was called up 3 or 4 times by people for not being empathetic enough, being a bit transactional in text messages and
Oh,
stuff.
wow.
Which,
Okay.
and you know me, that's not my style, but sometimes you're mid conversation with someone,
Yeah.
something that's ongoing, and you ping them a quick message, can you do that? And they were in a bad place.
Yes.
And at the moment, people are worried about their jobs, worried
Yes.
about their business, worried about their health, worried about their family's health.
Mhm.
We've got so much going on outside
Mhm.
the day-to-day work that we transact.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone in my network who's in banking, senior in banking, and she mentioned that her mother lives on her own, a couple of 100 miles away from where she lives, no support in the area, and won't move away to be closer to her. So she's had to drive down during the lockdown to check in on her, and she said every time she drives away, it really wrenches at her, rips at her.
Oh, yeah.
And I said, how would you feel if someone phoned you 20 minutes after you'd left your mum and you were on your way home and you were feeling all emotional and they were very transactional with you? How would you feel about that?
Yes.
And I think that's the sort of thing we need to be aware of, because that person on the other end of the phone might be me, might be you. We
Yeah.
wouldn't be aware. So we're thinking, I just need to phone this person, not knowing where they are at that point in time. In normal times, we can pretty much guarantee that people are at their desk, or they're in the office, or whatever it may be, when we speak to them. But these aren't normal times. People are working from home. They've got screaming kids or other things going on.
Yes.
We've got to dial up the empathy, but that teaches us a lesson for the rest of our lives, normal times, as you call it, because we all of this happens in a normal life, but we compartmentalize it a lot more easily. But actually, if you can dial up the empathy at all times, it can make
Mhm.
such a huge difference to your professional relationship. And it's just the right thing to do.
Yes, yeah. That's interesting. No, and I agree with you completely because I must say, I was recently asked for a favor, and that was a quick favor for me to do normally, to be honest.
Yeah.
But on that day, I was driving. Like, honestly, as you were speaking, I was taking myself back to my situation.
Yeah.
And I was driving for 6 hours already, and I was quite stressed about whether my flight going to happen or not. And there was so many things on my mind, and I was asked for a favor. And I said, yeah, sure, I'll look into that once I can. And when I mean once I can, in my world, it means once I can. It doesn't mean in 3 years' time. And what really kind of set me off was the fact that it was like, yes, please, I'll look forward to hear from you before 1 p.m. And honestly, a part of me raising my eyebrows and not responding, I couldn't do anything else. Because I knew if I want to respond, the problem will be something very harsh. I didn't want to be very harsh. I wanted to be stay professional. And I thought, you know what? I did tell you already, I'm busy today. So take that message, right? Reread, just reread. And I think it's important in nowadays world, just as you said, to be considerate what people are doing, where they're coming from. Maybe they're coming even from the funeral.
Yeah.
We don't know what's happening. Remember, they just lost somebody, and now you're calling them and you try to sell something or you ask for help and everything else. So I think we have to be quite mindful of other people's availability and whether they can do something or not. Otherwise, we actually are ruining the opportunity of building stronger relationships.
And you've reminded me of something that happened quite a few years ago. I mean, over a decade ago, but it sticks in the mind. So when I started work, as you know, I'm ancient. I'm old and decrepit. And when I started work, we didn't have email. We didn't have mobile phones. And so I was a civil servant at the very beginning, and we were tasked with replying to letters. We used to get letters. They were written in pen and not quill, but we used to get letters.
Oh,
And we were tasked with replying to them within 28 days. Can you imagine that now? And just a few years later, I was running networking groups, and I had been at a breakfast meeting somewhere else in the country, and I'd got back to the office. It was a 2 hour drive or something. So I'd been to a breakfast meeting at 7:30, left at 9:30, probably 10 o'clock, got back to the office 11:30, 12 o'clock.
mhm.
And there were two emails from the same person. The first one was at 8 o'clock in the morning or something, and it was a complaint about their breakfast meeting that they'd attended. And then there was another at 11 o'clock saying, "It's disgusting, you haven't answered my email yet." And, and I think there's a couple of things there. I think there's a level of expectation that's unreasonable.
Yeah. Mhm.
And so there needs to be more empathy from that person on that. Actually, this person isn't just sitting there waiting for my email. He's doing things, and a little bit of trust and faith. But actually, and I have no recollection how I responded at all. It's just that is the bit that sticks in my mind. But
Yeah.
I would hope, can't guarantee, but I would hope that I had the empathy to not get angry about that and take that into my response, because this is a person who's angry. So I think there's a really important thing with professional relationships, that we don't allow our anger to guide where the relationship goes, or
Mhm.
our disgust, or whatever it might be. I had a falling out with someone we both know, good friend and colleague, recently, and we were both stressed
Mhm.
a particular day, and he had offered to do something, but he'd asked me something, and it was, to me, a really bizarre ask. It was done on
Mhm.
a WhatsApp voice note. So I
Right.
replied with a WhatsApp voice note trying to explain it, but he still didn't understand it. So he's getting stressed.
Mhm.
I'm listening, and I don't like particularly WhatsApp voice notes, so I'm getting stressed. And we end up shouting in voice notes at each other. And we haven't spoken since.
Oh,
And
wow.
this was about 4 or 5 weeks ago.
Oh,
And he left me a voice note. I'm going, he's left me another bloody voice note on Friday. But then I listened to it, and it was lovely. And what he said is, he said, I saw a post that I put on Facebook. I thought it was great. And he said, it made me realize that there's some unfinished business and some unnecessary tension. He
Mm.
said, I want to apologize for my part in that.
Wow.
And he said, "You're someone I really respect in our community, above many." And it was 3 minutes, and it was really nice and really positive. But no, not one point did he attempt to blame me or lay any blame on my door. And my response was, "Thank you, and let me apologise for my part in that."
Yes.
I'm not good at that stuff. I'm better than I used to be. But I'm a grudge holder. That's my natural instinct.
Mm.
I'm learning, all the time. I'm learning not to be and to let things go. And I did a self-development course a few years ago that really helped me with that. But that's my natural instinct, and I'm sure
Mhm.
that's most of our natural instinct. But this was a textbook example of how to resolve the situation, and it's about going back to the angry emails.
Yes.
Why haven't you replied? When you've been driving. The smart ass in me, if you excuse my language, would want to go, well, I try not to email and drive. Point scoring, point to me.
Yes.
But that's not the approach that you need.
Hmm. I
Empathy.
love that. Love that. You're right. It is about being mindful of how do you respond? What is the tone of your email or tone of your voice note or tone of your voicemail, right? Because now we also still sometimes leave those voicemails. And it is about choosing the right moment when you should do things and being mindful. Other people could be just simply busy. And the old fashioned, still very important thing, just saying apology. It works. It just simply works. If you messed up, just say sorry. That's it. It's not a rocket science. I mean, people don't have to read a book to do that, right? Let's put it this way, okay? You definitely must read this book to improve your relationships, especially if you want to change your business, to increase, to pivot, to progress, to go to the next level. Then yes, we need to concentrate on building better relationships at a very high level. But same time, let's start with basics. Let's learn how to be respectful. Let's learn how to apologize. Let's learn just how to talk and communicate. Simple as that.
And just allowing, and this is something I'm not very good at, but allowing some humility, and not having to be right all the time.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
key. It's key, and that's what builds strong professional relationships. And the failure to do so is what destroys them very easily.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yes, I agree with that. Yes, just be human being. Oh, this is so powerful. Well, Andy, I'm not sure if you've been checking the time or not, but I just
No,
realized it's been such an amazing show. But actually, we're already after an hour, which is really incredible. But I must thank you. And, being immersed in your knowledge, being immersed in your expertise, it's such a blessing. It's my honor to have you today on the show. We have great compliments here from Maria. She says thanks. She says great interview. People say thank you very much. So it was wonderful, absolutely wonderful to have you today sharing your wisdom and especially your talent of writing a book within 2 weeks in a lockdown, not only to write but also publish, and already selling that on Amazon on during the lockdown. And by the way, everybody who will get the book now, you will also get a free delivery. So you better hurry up. You better get the book because it is a book for you to definitely improve relationship within your business or career so you can live a better life and a business life, of course, as well. So thank you so much, Andy. It was a pleasure to have you today.
Thanks, Olga. Always enjoy your company. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And everybody who was watching us today, whether it was on Facebook, LinkedIn, or maybe YouTube, thank you so very much for your attention, for staying with us till the end, and also for your participation and your comments. And by the way, Andy, we went international again today, which is amazing because we have people sharing their locations, which is great. I love saying that. So thank you so very much, everybody. We'll be posting this interview also on YouTube for watching it later. But thank you so much. We'll see you later. Take care, everyone.